This would be positive 90 degrees. So I'll add that keyframe. This would be positive 180 degrees. So I'll add that keyframe. Okay. Here, this would be negative 90 degrees. Add keyframe. And then this would be negative 180 degrees. Now, I do not know, I guess we'll find out, but I do not know if, okay, well, this is up to the user actually. So because I did negative 180 to 180, I actually wouldn't recommend that. What I would say is I would make this 0. I would do this as positive 90. And I would go from 0 to 360 because it doesn't really make sense to send negative angles for a propeller. So we'll just do 0, 90, 180, but it's chronological or it's sequentially increasing, right? So 0, 90, 180, 270, because this is defining what a positive rotation would be. And then all the way up here, we'd get 360. So now from 0 to 360, we have a full rotation of the propeller being as viewed from the front counterclockwise. So this is where the sign convention kind of matters. So at this point, we have the yellow keys. We have framed the keyframes here. So let's just say that we went ahead and did this for all of them. So now we're ready to actually export this. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and say,
I got one other question.
Yeah, sure.
So what if we wanted to tilt that propeller?
Yes. So you would just add another animation.
Okay.
So you would have one animation dedicated to rotation. And then you would also have an animation, you would add basically another armature to the propeller, whose job would be to tilt it. And so I can probably actually show that. So let's go to Shift A, armature. So at this point,
have like a wing or nacelle tilt with it as well?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
So at that point, you would basically just, let me think about the best way to do that. You would basically rotate you'd have an armature assigned to multiple items is the way I would think to do it. Okay. Then again, I haven't actually done that, but if I do, I can add that on as an add-on video.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I think ultimately the way that you would go about doing that is you would effectively, so the way that these rotate, you would, let's do this. So I'll do rotate. We'd want to rotate, let's say, about this axis. We would assign this, so we'd parent object. And then from here, we would add another keyframe in. So this would be ZYX roof oiler. Let's do RZZ, enter. And that would be, let me do RZZ. Let's do here, RZZ 0, enter. I, rotation. And then here we could do another rotation. So let's make this RZZ 9D, enter, I, rotation. So then you can see that this propeller is now rotating.
Yep.
And the axis in which you rotate the propeller, if you were to move this armature to where the actual hinge line is of the nacelle, let's say, then you would actually get the propeller moving, translating through space as well, if that makes sense. Because this is your hinge line, effectively. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that.
Yeah. But thanks for going through that. Yeah, towards the end of the summer, when we do get it, maybe more of the VTOL designs, maybe do like a follow-on quick one to.
Yeah, I'd be happy to make like I think we talked about maybe a quad tilt rotor for this. I could definitely do a video on animation of that as well. Like probably from start to finish, I wouldn't mind showing that.
Yeah, that sounds good. But so sorry, I cut you off. We were saving and then.
Oh yeah, sure. So once you're happy, let's just say, for example, that everything is animated. I think I may have just undone my own animation on these, but that's fine. I may have to redo this animation. I think I may have deleted the animations. No, I did not. I see what happened. So let's do, click this, we'll do parent object. There we go. Okay. So now, let's say we're happy with the animations, everything's moving as we want. Now we're ready to kind of export this. So at this point, what we would do is we'd come into, so we've added our data refs. We know what's going on. We would go into tool. Let's see, I believe it's actually scene. Under scene, there's now going to be a tab called X-plane. So we're going to go drop down on X-plane, select 11 because we're using X-plane 11. Here we're going to do print debug info. We would like to see that. We're going to also select this drop down that says other collections collection. We're going to select root collection. You could name this honestly whatever you'd like. Textures on your default, we need to make sure that we select our texture, our red.png or whatever it may be named. Nothing needed for night and normal. Blend glass and normal metalness just makes the vehicle appear more shiny. In my opinion, it looks pretty good. And I believe that's everything. Just checking stuff. Yeah, so that should be everything. So at this point, we would just go ahead and do export OBJs. So you can see it's going to take a second. We'll go into our file explorer here. And now you should see something that says collection, a 3D object. So this 3D object is actually an X-plane collection. And just like I mentioned with the Excel document, there's a lot of like first time steps that are kind of trial and error in a way that you have to do in X-plane to get the fuselage out of the way and to get it to where you have to enter in non-zero weights and a bunch of small little kind of trivial, silly things that you have to do to just get X-plane to not be upset because you're technically making a new airplane. And so when you make a new airplane, you have to give it a weight, you have to give it balance, fuel, propellers, all this stuff. And you don't actually end up using any of those, but you have to enter in some of those values. And so I would highly recommend using an existing aircraft file from an old previous vehicle, from this vehicle, from any vehicles moving forward. Start with an old vehicle that X-plane is already happy with and just overwrite the geometry. To me, that's definitely the easiest way to do it. So what we'll do is we'll go into Plane Maker, and we're going to start by opening that starting file, whatever you want to start with. You'd start with that file. So we'll open that. So this was the last thing that I was working on. And so what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and do standard MISC objects. And here you'll see collection.obj. So we're going to click on this button here, and you're going to now find your newly exported 3D object. Click open. It will update if there's any changes. And now this is your animation. And so what you're checking to look for here, and let me talk about how I'm moving the camera. Plus zooms in, minus zooms out. It's not the best thing. There's nothing you can do with your mouse that I have found. A moves the camera right. D moves the camera left. W tilts you down, and S tilts you up. So a weird combination of camera movements here. But this is now your vehicle. And so again, there was quite a few things that I've had to change in some of these settings to basically just get the vehicle to be happy. So like I had to give it a weight, I had to give it some specific power, I had to tell it had an engine, I had to do all these kind of funky things that don't really matter, but it's just so that X-plane doesn't get like nans or it doesn't do anything silly when you're making the vehicle. Basically all of that was just trial and error. I just kept on looking at what the error was and typing in some things and then following the error chain until it was happy. And that's why I said I'd highly recommend starting with an existing aircraft file because you won't have to redo that ever again, which is really nice. So basically what you're looking for here, though, is that in X-Plane, did your animations work? Do the animations look okay? Does your texture look okay? And so assuming that you started with a good texture, your texture should look good because this is how it looked. Your animations, if followed properly, should also look good. And it's basically just cycling them through their extremes. So if this is correct, then X-Plane is happy. So this is effectively your last step, so to speak. And after this point, what you would then do is you would take this folder that you're working in, you would then come into X-Plane, into the aircraft. And so what I can do here is let me just make this into a folder really quick. So let's do E150T underscore tutorial. So what I'll do is I'm going to make a copy of all of this, put it into here. So under aircraft, it doesn't matter where you put it, extra or laminar. I tend to put it in laminar. You can see I already have one in here, which is what I've been flying with. But at this point, you would save this vehicle. So I'm just going to save this here into my C150T model. So we'd save this. Yes. Now we're done in PlaneMaker. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to take this folder that has everything, and we would paste it into our X-Plane aircraft. So now at this point, if you just wanted to check that it's being seen by X-Plane, you can open up X-Plane. So we'll give this a second to load.